in your own words, I know the Constitution doesn't talk about this type of legislation per se, but it is alluded to as far as the backdoor deals that are going on with legislation. What do you say about what the Constitution says about it?
I think that the American people are tired of the backroom deals, the closed-door negotiations. This president promised transparency in the health care debate. It has not materialized in any way. Obviously, you've got these backroom deals. Democratic leadership in both the House and the Senate are crafting these bills behind closed doors. You saw what happened with Senator Nelson in terms of getting a Medicaid exemption on the mandate there. So you have just generally speaking, in terms of the way the legislative process is working, it's dysfunctional. It's not happening in a transparent way, in a way that the American people can be proud of. But I think your point, your question gets to a more fundamental issue, and that is the underlying constitutionality of the bill. When members of Congress swear their oath, they swear an oath to defend the Constitution, uphold the Constitution. And I don't think it's just the job of the judiciary to decide whether a piece of legislation is constitutional or not. I think it is incumbent on every member of Congress, before he or she assesses or evaluates a piece of legislation, to assess first and foremost not whether or not it's wise or unwise public policy, but first, is this constitutional? Does the Congress have the power in the first place to pass this legislation? I think that if members of Congress took that more seriously, if they evaluated the constitutionality of the bills that they're voting on in the first place, then you'd see a lot of bad bills be defeated before they move through the legislative process to that second phase, where legislators would then evaluate, is this wise or unwise public policy?
You have been quoted saying that you are pro-life.
Yes.
Do you believe that it is a federal issue or a state's issue? As in, if you were to go to Congress to represent the 6th District, Roe versus Wade, would you be in favor of overturning that and giving it back to the states, or do you think it should stay federally?
Good question. I am pro-life. I believe that we need to promote a culture of life in everything we do. My view, as a constitutional scholar, is that Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided. That there is no fundamental right to an abortion anywhere in the Constitution. Certainly the original meaning of the 9th Amendment, the original meaning of the Constitution, did not contemplate, in my judgment, a fundamental right to an abortion. Now, what did Roe versus Wade do? Obviously the Supreme Court disagrees with me on that issue. They've decided that there is a fundamental right to an abortion pursuant to Roe versus Wade. So what did Roe versus Wade do? Well, Roe versus Wade federalized the issue of abortion. It basically said that state governments and the federal government cannot regulate in certain areas, cannot regulate certain aspects of abortion. Now, the Congress has to work within the confines of what Roe versus Wade has done if it's to pass simple legislation. Constitutional amendment would be different, of course. But I believe that a member of Congress, under the current interpretation of the Constitution by the Supreme Court, does have considerable amount of leeway in promoting pro-life legislation at the federal level. The Supreme Court made it a federal issue, and so I think the Congress is entitled to pass legislation, for example, the ban on partial birth abortion. The Supreme Court has upheld 5-4 recently the federal ban on partial birth abortion, and I think that was a good piece of legislation. I certainly would have supported that. But going back to the kind of the fundamental question, should it be a federal issue or a state issue? Unfortunately, the federal government, through the Supreme Court, made it a federal issue. And it should never have been a federal issue, because I don't think the federal Constitution confers on the American people a fundamental right to an abortion. And without Roe versus Wade, I think both the federal government, but mainly the state governments and the state legislatures, would be entitled to regulate abortion in accordance with the will of the people of those particular states.
It goes to my next question of jobs. You know, not only is the U.S. in a great need of jobs and jobs now and jobs that we needed yesterday, the state of Kentucky and your district that you're campaigning for, what's something immediately that you think that you could do to create jobs for this district?
Well, you know, the Congress of the United States right now in January and February of 2010 should be focused like a laser on jobs, employment, and the economy. And unfortunately, for the past year, our Congress, instead of focusing on getting us to recovery, everything they've done has been to hurt the economy. Every legislative initiative that they've had not only has failed to provide the jobs and stimulate the economy, it has actually exacerbated the problem, created a conditions of uncertainty, punished success, and certainly made entrepreneurs very wary about hiring new people. I mean, think about what this Congress has done over the past year. They passed a $1 trillion bill that they called a stimulus, which was really a Keynesian experiment. They said, the administration said that if Congress didn't pass it immediately, that we would go above 8% unemployment. Here we are almost 12 months later, and we're over 10% unemployment, 11% unemployment in Kentucky. Then they passed, the House of Representatives passes, the cap-and-trade energy tax. Our congressman co-sponsored twice the card check legislation, which would do away with the secret ballot in workplace elections. Certainly creating a great deal of uncertainty on the part of management in a lot of businesses. And then, of course, on top of all of that, you've got this massive new expansion of the federal government, a government-run healthcare proposal that would amount to a takeover of about 1/6 of the American economy. And you have the president threatening to fine and impose greater pressures on our financial system by punishing the banks. And so you see in all of that that the Congress and this administration has done everything the wrong way in terms of creating the environment that we need for job creation. So what would I do? I would do everything the opposite of what they're doing in Washington right now. I can't create jobs as a politician, okay? What we've got to understand is that politicians don't create jobs. Entrepreneurs and private employers create jobs. So what we need to do is get the government out of the way and recognize that, hey, the government doesn't create jobs. The government might create some government jobs, some public jobs, some bureaucracy-related jobs, which is all that the stimulus bill could claim. But in terms of energizing the economy and really getting people back to work in this country, we need to stimulate private employment. And to stimulate private employment, we need to get the government out of the way. We need to reform our regulatory system to make sure that there's not undue pressure on private enterprise. We ought to certainly reduce taxes. We need to think about reducing the marginal rates, making it a flatter tax, short of the national sales tax or the fair tax. If we don't have the votes for that, we certainly need to reduce the rates, make it a flatter tax, and reduce the marginal rates. We need to look at capital gains tax cuts. We need a growth-oriented strategy that calls for the retreat of the federal government out of the private economy to allow entrepreneurs more certainty, more freedom, and the ability to create more jobs.
Well, Andy, I appreciate you coming and
Thank
talking
you.
to me again.
Thank you.
I am Mica Sims. I write for MicaSims.com, and you can check out your website is andybarr4congress.com.
That's right.
It's ANDYBARR forcongress.com. Be sure to check them out, and can they contact you on there as well?
Absolutely, and we encourage everybody to sign up. If you're interested and inclined to support our message of limited government and free enterprise and a strong national defense and fiscal responsibility, go on our website, andybarr4congress.com. Put your name in there. You can volunteer, you can donate online, you can volunteer online, you can learn how to get involved, and we would certainly encourage that because, like I said, we're going to need a grassroots effort to communicate our message, and we would appreciate any support that anyone could provide.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.